Hello, everybody. Just wanted to start off with a little welcome. So my name is Megan, and then I have Caitlin and Emily with me, and we are going to be talking to you today about burnout, which y'all probably knew that already. So we can go ahead and get started. Okay, so just a few of our objectives today. Not sure if any of you have looked at the PowerPoint. If you didn't, that's totally fine. But we're just going to be talking about what burnout is, the difference between stress and burnout, understanding what workplace burnout is, consequences of that, and hopefully teach you a few strategies and tips on how to cope and avoid burnout in your own personal life. So kind of along the lines with our objective, we have the plan of what we're going to be talking about today. So first, we're pretty much just going to define burnout, talk about what the biggest difference between stress and burnout is. We are going to have a few open discussion questions. So it would be super awesome if y'all would unmute yourself or put in the chat. Caitlin is going to be monitoring the chat. So feel free to, if you don't want to unmute yourself or don't have the ability to do that, you can go ahead and type in there and just talk about some different research that we have found, statistics we found about burnout and what that looks like for many Americans. And hopefully end off by giving you some helpful strategies, tools, and tricks that you can utilize in your own personal life to avoid getting workplace burnout. So our first discussion question is, what is burnout? So if a few people would just let us know what you think burnout is or what that means to you when you hear that certain word.
A condition where you don't want to go to work anymore?
Good.
Overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed, yes, for sure.
I think of it as like an exhaustion or like inability to continue doing something.
Nice, that's good too. Inability to doing something, exhaustion, physical and mental exhaustion is what Maria says in the chat. So we're all kind of in agreement that burnout is just exhaustion, having low motivation to do something. And that's exactly correct. So we can move on from this question and we will continue.
Yeah, so you guys are pretty spot on with those definitions. So these are the ones that we came up with. This bottom one is from the World Health Organization. So you're pretty spot on. Like the highlights of these definitions are feelings of depletion or exhaustion, which you guys said. And then feelings of like negativity or cynicism about your job. And that relates to like the not wanting to do it, not wanting to go to the workplace. And then also reduced professional efficacy. So that's kind of like the feeling like I cannot do my job or I'm unable to be efficient doing the work that needs to get done. And these things all come from chronic workplace stress. And so oftentimes, like you think of burnout and you just think of, I'm like really stressed, which is related. But the next slide, we want to go into some of the differences between stress and burnout. So stress is usually a short-term response. It comes in waves and it's more based off of your situation at work. So if there's like a deadline coming up, you might be a little bit more stressed trying to get everything done. And as Ms. Murray says in the bottom corner here, stress is actually very important and it's what motivates us to do well. Stress is one of those important things in your job that can force you to be more productive when those deadlines come up, because we know that they will at some point in our careers. And the issue is when this stress becomes long-term. So in order to handle stress, we need to be able to turn off our fight or flight response. If your body is unable to do that, then it can turn into burnout. And so burnout is kind of stress that takes place over a longer period of time. It occurs when there's a disconnect between what you want from your occupation and what you're actually experiencing. It also can occur like when your workload feels just really overwhelming for a long period of time. And it can be characterized by consistent exhaustion. And then this little picture in the bottom right has some main differences between stress and burnout. So stress, you'll feel overengaged, you'll have some reactive emotions, hyperactivity, anxiety, and then physical toll. And then when this becomes long term, you'll kind of have that feeling of just falling off a cliff, like your body can't sustain it. And so that overengagement will turn into disengagement. Your reactive emotions will start to feel blunted or distant. You'll feel a little bit more helpless. Your motivation will be lost. It could actually lead to feelings of depression, and it's more emotionally tolling than the short-term physical toll of just stress. And so here are some possible causes of job burnout. So we have lack of control, unclear expectations, dysfunctional dynamics, an extreme environment, lack of social support, and work-life imbalance. So you guys can just take a minute and look at these questions, kind of ask yourself, for example, with lack of control, like, do you have a lot of control over your schedule or your workload? Or do you feel like you have all the resources you need to fulfill the obligations of your job? If you can answer any of these questions and say like, oh gosh, like my workplace is really overstimulating, or I don't have a very clear role in my job, like I haven't established those boundaries. These are all things that can put you at risk of developing burnout. And this is something that you can maybe come back to and do some reflecting on these questions and make sure that you're managing your workplace well and doing the things that you can to make sure that you don't get burned out. But yeah, these are the main causes that we found. And these are kind of the things that you guys mentioned as well, just about like the things that will lead to being exhausted and not wanting to complete the things at work. These are things that can really rub you the wrong way in the workplace and lead to stress and eventually burnout. And then this was a study conducted in 2016. And these were the top reasons that they found cited by human resource leaders. So the number one reason for burnout was unfair compensation, and that was 41% of the people that experienced burnout. 32% was an unreasonable workload, and then also 32% was too much overtime, poor management, no connection between the role and the corporate strategy. So this one was interesting to me. I think it goes back to feeling like your job has meaning, and like you're aligned with whatever your goals are in the workplace. If you feel like you're not contributing to the overall goals of the company, then it could feel like the meaning of your work is a little bit diminished, and that can lead to burnout as well. And then again, going back to that negative culture and dysfunctional workplace dynamics.
All right, so another discussion question we have is if anyone is open to sharing about this, if you have personally ever experienced burnout, and if you would like to share a little bit about that and your personal experience with burnout.
I'll go ahead. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry. Just to be fair, I'll put the camera on. I worked at a symphony, which is a nonprofit, and two of the six staff that were there, two critical people left. And then I think we were downsized anyway, and the director was an interim marketing person who was filling in as a director to hire the next person. So ultimately, I was a staff of one. And I told her, I'll stay, but you have to work on getting more people hired and getting that director hired. We somehow or another survived that symphony season through the summer, which is when you sell all the season tickets, renew the season tickets. But we were working until like 2 a.m, then back at 8 a.m. I don't think I'll ever do that again, ever.
Wow, that sounds very overwhelming. And also, like, just to touch on what you kind of said, is a few of the things that Emily just mentioned is what you were experiencing with that management, and it wasn't their fault, but just management, and then overworked, maybe unfair compensation at the time, just with the amount of work you were doing. So that seems very overwhelming. I can only imagine.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I definitely think that you were experiencing some dysfunctional dynamics there. overstimulation in your workplace, and it sounded like you didn't have a whole lot of control over your schedule and the duties that were being placed on you. So that's definitely a setup for workplace burnout. Thanks so much for sharing that.
Not a problem.
Would anybody else, or does anybody else have any thoughts or experience with burnout? Cynthia, would you like to share?
Yeah, I really resonated with the undermining from colleagues and such. That seems to be a big problem in certain departments where, I mean, I certainly have experienced that where, you know, I know the policies in place that we have to follow to do certain things. And then I get a lot of pushback from that, and it makes the job harder, and it makes it definitely more emotionally draining. And so that was definitely something that stuck out to me because I've experienced that.
Yeah, and that can feel frustrating too, I'm sure. Just kind of feeling you're a team of one, or that you're not getting any support from the people who are supposed to be there to support you. So that's very, very taxing. All right, anybody else before we move on that would like to share their experience possibly? All right. Perfect. So what we just wanted to highlight now is that you are for sure not alone. We wanted to provide some statistics about other people in this country, in the world, that are also experiencing burnout. So you can see here on this little graphic that we found in 2017, the State of American Vacation found that on average, we work 47 hours a week for full-time US employees. 1 in 5 employees work 60 plus hours a week, which is wild. If you can imagine how many hours are just in the week, that's an ungodly amount of hours being at work. 28% of employees miss 3 to 6 days of work each year just due to stress alone. 662 million vacation days went unused in 2016, and then 54% of employees ended 2016 with unused vacation days. So those vacation days are obviously placed there for us to, you know, take some time off and do fun things for ourselves. But I think oftentimes we just get in this constant cycle of work, and we live to work, and it doesn't have to also be like that. And that's why burnout is so prevalent in our country. All right, and then another study that was done also in 2017, it was a systematic review, and these are just a list of a few consequences that are caused because of job burnout. And obviously you can see the different categories here. There's physical consequences, psychological, and occupational. And then there are a few that were obviously a little bit more significant. So you can see the physical consequences. We have type 2 diabetes, very, very significant in findings, prolonged fatigue, severe injury, coronary heart disease. So this is our body rejecting the fact that we are that a lot of stress is happening, and it's your body replying to that. And this is what is being caused by that. We also have the psychological consequences. Let's see. Psychological consequences such as insomnia, depressive, which Emily kind of mentioned earlier, that after that prolonged period of being under so much stress, under a longer period of time, burnout oftentimes causes symptoms and possibly diagnosis of depression. And then occupational consequences, we've got job dissatisfaction, absenteeism, so not showing up or not being able to show up to work just because of that constant state of stress, new disability, also due to the high levels of stress. So Those are just a few. Those are just a few consequences of burnout. This obviously was a systematic review, so grabbed a bunch of different research and put it all into one, but this is just what they found in general.
And then there was a question in the chat. She asked, can you explain presenteeism and how is this a consequence? So presenteeism is actually the feeling of like needing to go to work even though you may be sick or you might have like reduced productivity at work. So it may sound like a good thing to be present at work, but it's actually the feeling of needing to be present at work even though your body is shutting down, you're not being productive, and you physically need the time off. And that's also related to all of those vacation days that went unused. It's not that we're not using them because we want to go to work. It's because, yeah, a lot of us are guilty of this. It's the feeling of needing to go to work and complete your job because maybe you haven't been productive. So you feel like you get into this cycle of, oh, I haven't been productive, so I need to work more, when really what your body needs is a break, some time off. So, yep, that's the definition of presenteeism. And it does come off a little bit like a positive thing, but yeah, just wanted to clear that up for y'all.
And can I add, this is Janet Besner. So the other aspect of presenteeism, which is really interesting, is being at work, not, so you wake up in the morning and maybe you have a headache, or maybe you have allergies, or maybe your back hurts, or maybe you're worried that your boss is being a jerk or your coworkers aren't being cooperative. So you go to work because you have no reason not to go to work. You're not sick. But you go to work and then all day you're distracted by whatever those things are. So your headache or your low back pain or your allergies, you're distracted. And so you can't be productive because of the distraction, whether it's emotional distraction, physical distraction, it doesn't really matter. Maybe it's your teenager who's just being a teenager, right? And so millions of Americans are at work distracted every day. And as a result, presenteeism costs organizations twice as much as absenteeism costs. It's this huge hidden problem that employers can't find difficulty quantifying, and yet must be addressed. So, employers want employees at work productive. That's the goal, right? And so employers that don't recognize presenteeism are really missing out on a lot of capacity that could be applied towards achieving their goals. So good job, Emily and Megan.
All right, so for those of you who either experience burnout or have just a good idea of what burnout is, before we start giving you a few strategies of possible ways to avoid burnout, what is your own personal experience or thought that you might have towards some ways to avoid burnout happening in your own personal life?
So for me, I'm Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
I would say just keeping your 8 to 5 normal hours, or whatever it is that your normal hours should be, taking a break to reboot and take your lunch hour. So you get that break midday. What I like to do during my break, unfortunately with COVID, was to go work out at lunchtime. And that would de-stress, come back, you're refreshed. And don't take work home with you. Don't take that after 5. That's my suggestions. My personal, what would I say? That was my personal change in life, to make sure that I could balance work, balance life, family, children, teenagers, because I have 2 of those, and just be sane and mentally balanced.
Very good. No, those are all really, really great strategies, especially not taking work home with you. Really great. So you're keeping your home life at home and your work life at work. And also the lunch break is also very important, and that you use that for a productive time to go work out and release those good hormones that we get whenever we work out, those happy hormones. So good. Anybody else?
I think from my earlier example, which I did work about 50, 60 hours a week on that project at the symphony, I learned don't overcommit.
Yeah, that's really good too. Yeah, I think a lot of times too, at least I've personally felt like this is, I feel so tied to work, and that I feel bad when I leave work without doing my work, or like I can't just pick it up tomorrow. I have to do it that day, finish it before I leave. And so that's just eating at my time, not noticing it's 6, 7 o'clock. And I'm like, I need to leave eventually. So yes, overcommitting can definitely get us in trouble.
You know, Megan, the other thing about that, and Rosara, is if you do overcommit, which I will admit I'm guilty of all the time. My eyes are bigger than my stomach, I like to say, is asking for help, right? It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to go to your boss and say, okay, boss, I've got all these things on my plate, right? And I know they're all valuable. I can't get them all done, and I can't get them all done right now. Can you help me prioritize? Or can I delegate something to someone else or put something off? You know, I think especially women, we really aren't in the habit of asking for help because we feel like we have to be super women, super moms, super workers, super whatever. And so, and our society doesn't support people asking for help, right? That's seen perhaps as a sign of weakness, which is just crazy. So I think if you are overcommitted, ask for help. You know, ask your spouse, ask your friends, ask your coworkers, ask your boss. You know, the worst they can do is say no. I can't help you, right? But it's okay to ask for help.
There's also in the chat, Charla says, allow remote work from time to time. This is not allowed through the current UPP. We're limited to a 30-day once a year. Texas State is a bit behind the curve with its remote and telecommute policies.
I will say, so that you guys are not put on the spot here, that is a great input on Charla, and I'm new to the university at Texas State, and I started at the office, and I know a lot of you guys are coming back to the office, and a lot of your coworkers are coming back to the office as of last week, I believe it is. But I was surprised to hear about limitations and this heavy encouragement of people coming back to the office. It's something that I'm putting out there for anyone who's more in management that may consider employee retention, but it's a big thing. This thing that was just posted, Charla's not alone. I can't tell you how many people have been sharing that very thing, and it has allowed them to have a work-life balance with their families. My kids are grown. In fact, I'm going home to one of his weddings. He's that grown next week. But I can identify, and I struggled when they were little and they were young. So I remember what it was like to have to run to the babysitter, and you know, and the babysitters charge you overtime, and you know, and if the kid is sick, and I don't know, there needs to be just a little bit of consistency on the I don't know how to say this, but what's being promoted and then what's actually occurring. So I'm saying this only because I love Texas State, and I would love for Texas State to succeed in retaining people, really good people.
Yeah, that is awesome feedback. Thanks so much for sharing your experiences with that.
So I'll just say, so I don't know, some of you know me. I'm a professor in the Department of Physical Therapy, so I'm faculty. I'm also chair of the Faculty Senate, stepping down from that role because I'm taking on a new job as chair of my department coming July 1st. But I couldn't agree more with you that our policies are old-fashioned and out of date with reality. And I think they, unfortunately, discriminate against women and underrepresented groups. And so I have been a huge advocate of changing our remote working policy, just to let you all know, as one of the leads of Wellcats, because it is a well-being issue, as you said. And so, the Senate, just so you all know, I know Staff Council is pushing back against this new policy recommendation, and Faculty Senate is joining you in pushing back and requesting additional flexibility for all the reasons you so eloquently stated, and more. I think this is an institutional issue that we have to continue to advocate for ourselves and for our well-being. And I just want you all to know that I'm completely committed to doing that, and I will continue to do it because I agree with you. And it's at odds with the administration, and that's the way it is. So we have to keep telling them until they get it.
And I am going to say a final thing on this because it's huge. This is really huge. So I've learned. I'm glad to be here so that somebody else can be at home, because I understand that the worry is, okay, well, you can't all be working at home. Okay, maybe not, but I can be here, and promise me you'll be flexible with somebody else and let them be there. And the biggest thing is, Professor Besner, thank you. I think that makes me happy to know that. I know it's not easy for you, and so thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I will always do what I think is right, regardless of the resistance against it, and will do so in a professional and respectful way. And so you're welcome.
All right, so we wanted to go into some of the strategies that we found to help you guys deal with and avoid workplace burnout. And so the first one that we came up with was to find your purpose. All of you guys are doing very purposeful and meaningful work. And for a lot of us, this might be our dream job, whatever we're doing right now. And for some of us, maybe it wasn't, but the meaning of your job is still there. Like, you're making an impact. And so it's important to take some time, reflect on what exactly that you find meaningful about the work that you're doing, whether it's, impacting somebody else, making someone else's job easier, or you might just find meaning in whatever your job is. If you're a teacher, like impacting students' lives, helping educate. All of us are doing wonderful work, working for a university. And so this is important to reflect on if you're feeling like, I don't know why I'm doing all of these things at work. It doesn't align with, why I signed up for this job. Maybe take some time, reflect on what gives me purpose, what makes me feel meaningful, and set a goal to increase those activities in your workplace. If you find that doing one aspect of your job is like really exciting, maybe set a goal to meet with whoever's on your boss and increase the amount that you get to do that one activity in your job. The more that you're doing those activities that make you feel purposeful and meaningful, the more excited you'll be to go to work every day and put in the effort to make things happen. And then next is exercise. So I believe Sarah was saying this earlier about how she would take her lunch break and exercise, and that is a great strategy to help you kind of feel refreshed in the workplace. Exercise can help to alleviate stress and increase feelings of well-being. We've all felt that kind of dopamine rush after a really good workout, and that's great to reset your body and get you started back for another round of work. Regular physical activity increases your energy levels and can lead to increased productivity. And then exercising with coworkers is another great strategy. This can help you build relationships in the workplace. So that's also a way to kind of hit two birds with one stone. You're exercising and building those relationships in the workplace. And both of those things are going to allow you to come back after that little break feeling really refreshed and excited to keep working. And then on the right, it says 44% of Americans use this strategy to combat burnout and stress. And it also allows you to reduce cortisol, which is like your main stress, fight or flight hormone that gets released in your body through exercise. So this is a great strategy for you guys to implement. And then also learning to manage stress. And this one is like a really tough one for me. I find that, mentally, I don't recognize when I'm stressed until my body starts feeling it. So this stress can manifest in like a bunch of different ways. And maybe, you guys are more familiar with your stress responses. It's an important thing to become aware of. But though stress is different from burnout, it can contribute to burnout in the long run if it's not managed well. Kind of like I was talking about earlier, being able to switch out of that fight or flight response is super important when it comes to the difference between stress and burnout. So having strategies to calm down your nervous system, get more into your parasympathetic instead of the sympathetic fight or flight. So some ways you can do this is to keep a stress journal to record the instances that you feel super stressed. And then you can look back on that and think about, this is what was contributing to it, and then find strategies of way to prevent those things from happening in your work life. And then also some stress management techniques at work could include deep breathing, meditation, and positive thinking. And 30% of Americans fight burnout through regular meditation. And this can be any form of meditation or conscious breathing just to help slow your heart rate down and again, decrease those effects of cortisol in your body.
So Emily, I'm wondering if you can give them a little more background on the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic, that, sympathetic is associated with fight or flight, parasympathetic, yeah.
Sure, yeah. So your sympathetic nervous system is known as your fight or flight response. This occurs when your body's going through some of that acute stress or anything pressing occurs. It's kind of our like primitive survival system in our bodies. And then your parasympathetic is known as your rest and digest. And this is when your nervous system is in a more relaxed state. Your digestive system is the main thing at play. And there's just two different routes in your body. Different hormones are released in sympathetic versus parasympathetic. In your sympathetic, you'll have a lot of cortisol and those stress hormones that are very beneficial in the short term to allow you to get your work done, get whatever that pressing need is fulfilled. But they can be detrimental long term if you don't know how to clear those hormones out of your body or switch back into your parasympathetic, which is kind of like the yin and yang balance of our bodies.
Alrighty, and another strategy that is really beneficial to helping reduce stress and prevent burnout is sleep. So for us as adults, it's recommended that we get 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. So one way that you can help to prioritize sleep, if that's something that you possibly struggle with, is put it in your schedule. We are all most of the time, very schedule-oriented people, and try to make it a priority. So by putting it in your schedule, it will help to stop you from infiltrating that with different social activities or different work activities that might possibly interfere with you getting that good sleep. Just making it really, really important and a priority in your schedule. So some first steps to help make that more of a priority, if that's what you're dealing with, is to have a normal routine. So every night before you go to bed, do you read? Do you always shower? That can look different for everybody. Keeping it consistent for sleep and wake times. So your body will obviously start to get used to going to bed and getting sleepy at 10 and then waking up again at 5:30. And then also to avoid caffeine intake late at night. I know I'm personally a victim of that because when I get tired at 3 o'clock, I very quickly run to the coffee pot and grab some more coffee. But sometimes that seeps more into 6, 7 o'clock when I'm just getting busy. So I know for me, to not drink coffee past a certain period of time in the day is better to not do. And if you don't have sleep, which on this picture, stress causes sleep problems and sleep problems cause stress. So it's a little bit of a nice balance that you have to get. But it's very important that we start to prioritize good sleeping habits. And 50% of Americans fight burnout with sleep. So that's a really large chunk of people. And just think about how vital it is that for them to get through their everyday, that they have to prioritize this sleep for them. All right, and also socialize. So we all are very social creatures. Social isolation is associated with that greater risk of the poor mental health and increased stress levels. We have different kinds of social support. So emotional is obviously going to be more of those people that you confide in, that you maybe if you're having a really stressful day and you just need to talk it through, if you're having any intense emotions. Instrumental is more, how do I put this? It's more kind of when you need to take care of a physical need and you need someone to like offer a helping hand. Like if you're going through a rough time and someone makes dinner for you or something. And then we have informational. So just someone that you go to that gives you some tools, tips, and tricks on how to fight anything you might be going through. And we all have different social support and what that looks like, and different people we go to for all of these different kinds of social support that we need. So one thing you can just ask yourself to reflect is, who do you have in your life that you can talk to or seek advice when you have a lot of work stresses going on? And as you can see here on the side, 51% of Americans deal with burnout by talking to friends and family. I know personally there are 3 to 4 people in my life that I usually run to if I'm feeling really overwhelmed or need to get some informational advice on what to do or how to talk to certain people about things that are getting to me at work. So everyone's kind of looks different. So just reflecting on that and how you best go about socializing with those people in your life. And lastly, I know we talk about this a lot, and Dr. Besner kind of mentioned it earlier about asking for help, and that's totally okay. We have resources on campus. We have the counseling center on campus that is available. So we just wanted to encourage, if you are to that point and you need professional help, it is okay to get that. And we have the resources at Texas State to make that able to happen. Especially right now, I know the counseling center, or at least they were at some point doing the telehealth, and they're very flexible with their hours. And I know it's really hard to ask for help, especially I know sometimes counseling has a little bit of stigma involved, but it is totally okay to ask for help. And we also have some other resources, which we have listed here on the slide, to help prevent burnout, some useful strategies that you can input in your everyday life, just from these different websites. And by getting help, it will help increase resiliency towards those stress that you could be experiencing through work, life stress, and burnout. All right, and that concludes our presentation, but we are going to stick around, obviously, and answer any questions that you might have. So please feel free to unmute yourself, and we will answer any questions you have.
Yeah, just so you guys that don't see the chat box, I'll read out this conversation that we're having. So Sam asked, have they found that the pandemic has had a larger impact on social isolation and burnout? And my response was that yes, social isolation has increased drastically due to the pandemic, but the effects of burnout have been a little bit all over the board, because many people have actually found a better work-life balance with the ability to work from home. So it kind of depends on what your exact job is and like home situations, things like that. So for some people, it's been a better effect on burnout. Some people it's been worse, but definitely the social isolation aspect has gone up a lot. And then Dr. Besner said that, yes, the incidence of loneliness has increased. Burnout has increased for healthcare providers and first responders dramatically. but we haven't seen any data on other groups. She has also seen data that employee engagement is higher as a result of the pandemic, but overall still very low overall, like about 30% of employees report high engagement.
I was wondering if the attendees feel empowered to talk to your supervisors about some of those issues that contribute to burnout that are related to your work. Megan or Caitlin, can you go back to that slide, please? Emily talked about that slide. Keep going back. It was before the, one more. Right. So if you do feel lack of control over your schedule or workload, I would hope that would be something you could talk with your supervisor about. If you're not clear about what your job is, I would hope that you would talk to your supervisor about that. If there are dysfunctional workplace dynamics, I would hope that you would talk about that. So hopefully you're getting my point here. Do you all feel empowered to talk to your supervisors about those things? And do you need our input about how to have those conversations, anything like that?
I have had many conversations with different supervisors. And I think that one of the biggest things that I remember to bring in with me is, what are the suggestions? So not just here's my problem, but what are the solutions that you can identify?
Right.
That kind of helps start that conversation, and
Yeah.
kind of, because you're giving them the options. Like, I think these are my options.
Right.
What do you think?
Yeah. So Sarah, have you had success with that approach?
Yes.
Yeah. And you were glad, even though it might have been intimidating or frightening to go in and have that conversation, you were glad you did?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very
That's
much
awesome.
so.
That's awesome. Congratulations for having courage.
Thank
I think
you.
that's what it takes. Yeah, I mean, supervisors, they may not know, right? And so they're there to help you work it out. And if you are a valuable contributing employee, my guess is that most of the time they're going to be motivated to help you. Anyone else have experience with that? Or have questions about how you would have a conversation like that?
I think just depending on like the kind of relationship that you have with your supervisor can be really beneficial in addressing these things. So I feel really supportive. So I'm not afraid to say, I need help, or like this deadline is approaching. Can we shift based on the timeline and what we're wanting out of it? And I think being open and honest, and kind of tying in what you guys mentioned earlier with asking for help, and really recognizing when the time to have that conversation is. So my supervisor's super supportive, so I think that's huge in making sure that we're not leading to these possible causes, but just having that internal check-in with myself, but also being clear and saying, here we are, this is what I'm experiencing, can we approach this together? And what Sarah said, and coming to the table with possible solutions or working through it together has been really beneficial, I think, especially navigating the virtual office life and now being back in the office. Like, that's been huge.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Sam. I couldn't agree more that having a relationship based on trust is I would call it a prerequisite to having the kinds of conversations that I'm suggesting that Sarah mentioned. So if the level of trust in your relationship with your supervisor is low, so maybe you focus on that, right? Building trust. And so how do you build trust with someone? You do what you say you're going to do. You offer, you're sincere. You are professional and respectful. If they rebuff your efforts to build trust, you have to keep trying. You just have to keep trying, especially if they're boss, right? You can't just kind of ignore them. That would make it miserable. So efforts to build trust take time and patience over time. So I think that's absolutely a really important point. The better your relationship is in any of these situations, the more likely there's going to be a effort put forth to resolve the issue. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thanks for sharing that. Caitlin, can you stop sharing, please? Thank you. There's everybody. Anyone else have questions or comments? Is there something we didn't talk about that you want us to talk about?
If I could jump in real quick.
Hey, Anthony. Yeah.
Hi. It's interesting when I'm listening to this because especially the last couple of conversations there, I feel like I'm sort of in the opposite direction. My boss really does give me a lot of autonomy just because of the physical nature. She's in San Marcos. I'm in Round Rock, and she empowers me to, for the most part, make decisions to keep the library up here running well. What I find, just as I reflect on this, what I find kind of interesting is if there's something that involves my staff that I think is too much for us, I'll speak up and I'll say, we can't do that, or we need to delay that. And my boss is always really good. She usually hears me out. I can tell if things are important or not. But when it comes to me, I'm like, yes, ma'am, what date do you want that done? Even when, and like, I'm feeling it right now because the last 2 months in particular, so a lot of my work is seasonal, right? And a lot of stuff. So a lot of administrative comes up, on a university level. Outcomes and assessments, performance reviews, all these things seem to hit at the same time. And so that on some levels, I can't say, I need another month to do that outcomes and the university has made a commitment and they're telling me. So honestly, like the last couple of months, those are emotionally very difficult for me.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I go like, I can't do this right now, I need, a little bit of break. Well, then I'll stay later because I knew I took extra time during the day to give myself a little mental relief too. So it's just kind of strange to me that I work this way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're alone in treating other people better than we treat ourselves, if I can say it that way. And so one strategy that I recommend to people is that you think of yourself as your best friend. What would you say to your best friend? How would you treat your best friend? If you have that mental talk going on that maybe isn't so helpful. And if you told that story, Anthony, to your best friend, they would say, well, could you build in some me time, some self-care? Could you get a head start on something? Could you go to your boss and say, I know all these things are coming. It would be great if you would just remind me to take some time to go do my wellness time. I think that's what we mean by asking for help, so to speak, or support. So it's a good strategy to have other people who care about you help you be accountable to yourself, right? I mean, that's just caregiving in a different form. So I totally appreciate what you're saying, and I think it's not uncommon, and we can and I think each of us can address that as well with some of these same strategies. Do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Melise, I'm not sure if I'm saying your name right. Is your hand up?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Oh, that was just my cursor. Never mind.
Oh.
Thank you. Caitlin, Megan, Emily, any last parting words?
I don't think so. But if anyone's on the Round Rock campus and wants to do a walk tomorrow from 12:15 to 12:45 and get some nice peer exercise in, we will be in the front of Avery, and would love to have you all come walk with us.
They even remind you to set your watch to exercise time.
Avery front facing University Boulevard?
On the south end, so in the little courtyard square area.
Facing Willow Hall.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We meet at 12:15 and do about till 12:45.
Yeah. I want to say thank you to Emily, Megan, and Caitlin for an excellent presentation. Megan and Emily and Caitlin are leaving the university next week. They're going out on their full-time rotations because they are now third-year doctor of physical therapy students. They're going to be graduating in a year, so they're going out into the world. So I want to say thank you so much for your contributions to the health and wellness of our employees. And they will be replaced, so to speak, by 3 new DIAs who are on the call: Kaylee, Charles, and Iris. Say hi, you all. So if you are on the Round Rock campus, you'll start to work with Kaylee and Charles and Iris, who will be as excellent as these 3 have been. And I just want to say thank you all so much. You've been awesome.
Yeah, I wanted to say thank you guys for the opportunity to do things like this. I've learned a lot from it, and I really appreciate you guys being engaged and responding and being open with your stories. That really adds to the presentation, I think, and helps us all get a perspective on it that's more real life. I haven't really been in the working world yet, so it's awesome to hear your perspectives about some of the challenges that you've experienced with all of this. And I hope that you guys found all of this information helpful as well. So thanks for your participation.
And Ellie put the link to the evaluation in the chat. So if y'all would give us some feedback, we appreciate it. It helps us to make these sessions better next time. So thank you all. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.